now I will discuss about the electric field. Electric field due to uniformly charged dimensional bodies. Electric field due to uniformly charged dimensional bodies. So now, suppose there will be various dimensional bodies whose electric field can be discussed. We will be doing it based on one dimensional body first, then we will go to two dimensional body, then we will go to three dimensional body, right. Uniformly charged means where the charge will be distributed equally throughout the dimension of the body given. Why we need to do it in a different way? Why can't we directly apply the formula of k q by r square? Because you must be knowing that we have already discussed that point, that the formula suggesting the electric field evaluation of k q by r square, this formula is applicable for q as a point charge. As q as a point charge, for that charge the formula is applicable, but for dimensional charge the formula will not be applicable. That's the reason why, to find out the electric field against the dimensional charged bodies, either it is uniformly charged or non-uniformly charged, right. Whenever there is a dimensional charged body, finding of electric field due to that charged body cannot be done simply by using the formula k q by r square against the total charge. The reason behind, the formula is only applicable against point charge, right. So that we should always keep in mind. So that's why first we will be doing it for linearly charged rod. Okay, first we will take a one dimensional body, that is a rod, which is, being it is one dimensional body, so that's why one dimensional body charge distribution will be said to be linearly, that is charge per unit length will be constant. So let a rod of length L, let a rod of length L having charge Q distributed, uniformly. Let a rod of length L having charge Q distributed uniformly means lambda will be linear charge density. Lambda will be known as the linear charge density, which means charge by length. Okay. So if total charge is given Q available on length L, so lambda can be written as Q by L. Okay, so Q by L is the term called lambda. When this Q by L is constant, so that means charge is distributed uniformly. So for example, if I take a one dimensional rod, having charge Q, later I am showing the charge Q. Okay. So this is a line perpendicular bisector. This is a line perpendicular bisector to this rod. Let the ends of the rods are known as AB. The total length is L, such that I can say this is L by 2, this side is also L by 2, right. Again a similar concept like that. In the previous case we discussed the electric field at a point on the perpendicular bisector for one pair of identical point charges. Here also we will discuss the electric field at a point on perpendicular bisector, but this time the charge is not located at the end points A and B. Rather, charge is available throughout the length of the rod, right? Charge is available at everywhere throughout the length of the rod. So, if I consider a point P on the perpendicular bisector line at a distance x, so we need to connect the force exerted by each part of the rod on this +1 charge at P. Previously, in the previous case, we only considered the force from the end point of that separation because the charges were located at the ends, right? But this time charge is located throughout the line AB. Got it? So that's why this is a dimensional charge. So total charge can't be considered as a point object. So that's why one step calculation is not possible here. Then what we are supposed to do? We will go for calculus. So first we will consider small portion as element part of the rod on either side of the rod. Let these are two small sections dl length each, right? And they are on either side of the bisector line. So what I was discussing that there are two identical small element part taken on the rod on either side of the bisector line. These element parts are though lengthwise available, but being they are very small, so they can be treated as good as a point object, right? So charge appearing on each element part of the rod can be treated as a point object, right? That is equal to dq. So that can be written lambda into dl. Lambda being the charge appearing on every unit length, so dq will be lambda dl. So therefore this dE expression which are against the charges appearing on this dl element, so therefore that dE force can be written k into dq by square of this distance. This is x, this is small l. So square of the distance I can write down, it is x square plus small l square. Got it? But importantly, there is a geometrical angle theta. So against each pair of identical element, right, each pair of symmetrical element, the ultimate effect at P will be at this point, and that can be written 2dE cos theta, right? Yes or no? Tell me. Because d sin theta and d sin theta components will be getting cancelled out, and it will happen with each and every pair of symmetrical charged bodies, isn't it? This will happen with each and every pair of symmetrical charged element bodies, right? So that's why for one pair of element it is 2d cos theta. For all these pair of elements possible on either side of the symmetrical line, that is the line of bisector, the effects will be for every elements, it will be in the format of 2d cos theta only. The value wise definitely differ, because separation length, see, this separation length will keep changing, right, and theta will also change. So obviously the value of 2d cos theta will be different, but they will be all appearing along the line of bisector. So therefore we can write down, hence we can write down the total electric field due to due to the total charge on the rod, total electric field due to the total charge on the rod, that can be obtained by integrating the general expression appearing for one pair, that is 2d cos theta. Integration is why we are saying integration, because against each such pairs we will be getting the result as 2d cos theta along the line of bisector. All values will be different in magnitude, but they will be same in direction. So we know that how many such elements are there, we do not know. Being continuous function, we know that whenever there are vectors appearing same in direction, infinite in numbers, for all continuous elements, the total value can be found by adding all of them, and which can be done by integration. So therefore we will write down, it is integration of 2d expression will be this, that is k into dq by x square plus L square, that into cos theta, again cos theta will be x by this distance, that is x by under root of x square plus L square, right. In this case, as because in each step I am taking two such elements, that means if you integrate for limit of L from 0 to capital L by 2, that means if you integrate for all elements on one side of the symmetry line, the other side's elements will be correspondingly appearing together, because in each step I am taking two such elements. That's why we are integrating the step of 2d cos theta. Are you getting me or not? As because we are integrating the general step of 2d cos theta, means we are in one step we are taking the result of two elements in one step. So that's why if there are 100 elements, so I have to calculate it for 50 steps. Got it now? So therefore it is 2k taken out, dq can further be written as lambda dl. Okay, x being constant, so that 2 can be taken out, and lambda is also taken out. So it is integration of dl divided by, it will be x square plus L square to the power 3 by 2 for limit 0 to capital L by 2. Limit of integration will be 0 to capital L by 2. That means I will be only integrating one half of the rod for all elements appearing on one side from the bisector line. So that consider other elements on the other side as well. Got the method? Could you follow the process of getting the electric field information? And this time we are taking a specific point on bisector, and at that point we are trying to know the electric field against the total charge appearing on the rod. So that's why we are not changing the point P on the bisector line for one element to other element. So that's why x is constant here. Yes, so x was isolatedly available in the numerator, that's why I could take it out, but in denominator I can't take out from the term of x square plus L square. So that's why x will remain there in the part of integration. Got my point? Now question arises, how to do this integration? Do you know this? You can see it is a degree difference is 2 between the terms, I mean like between the functional values, functional terms available in numerator and denominator. Numerator is independent of L variable and denominator is of power 2. So direct substitution will not be applicable here. Whenever there is a degree difference of 2 available between the function available in numerator and that in denominator, then direct substitution will not work. Then what you have to do, you have to go for transformation. See, whenever as because the integration is appearing dl divided by x square plus L square whole to the power 3 by 2 with the limit I am having 0 to L by 2, right. So what I can do, degree difference is 2, so that's why we will not expect that substituting the whole denominator I will get the derivative in numerator, so that is not going to happen here. So what we can do, geometry was like this, right? This was L, this was X, this is theta. So can you write down tan theta is equal to L by X. Tan theta is equal to L by X. So from this part I can write down L is equal to X tan theta. If I do that, then this integration will become dl divided by, so but before substituting that I should change, because theta is also changing. Once L is changing, theta is also changing, so that's why it is called change of variable. So differentiating L with respect to theta, I can write down dl is equal to X. Tan theta derivative will be sec square theta d theta, right? So therefore now instead of dl I can write down X sec square theta d theta, and in denominator it will be x square taking common, so 1 plus tan square theta whole to the power 3 by 2, right? Yes or no? Got my point. So once x square and here power 3 by 2, so it will be x cube. So I can write down here it was x, denominator is x cube, so it will be ultimately 1 by x square. So integration here it becomes sec square theta d theta, and in denominator 1 plus tan square theta is also sec square theta to the power 3 by 2, so it will be sec cube theta, right? So ultimately it becomes 1 by x square cos theta d theta, right? Because finally it will be 1 by sec theta d theta. So finally we have reached to a simple integratable form of integration of cos theta d theta. Once I have changed the variable, that means limit must also be changed based on the relation used for changing L by theta. So when L was 0, theta will be 0. When L is capital L by 2, so theta will be tan inverse of capital L by 2x, right? This will be the upper limit of theta. Got my point? Because final theta, the extreme value of theta naught, if you take, this is x, this is L by 2. So tan theta naught will be how much? L by 2 by x, that is L by 2x. So theta naught will be tan inverse L by 2x. So now you complete this integration and then put that result. You know the integration of cos theta is how much? Sin theta. So then putting the upper limit value minus lower limit value, you will get the answer, right? Let's see, this is the way mechanism is something like this. Cos result will be sin, okay? So sin theta. So what you are getting ultimately, so when you will be, see, when we will be using, we will be doing the integration result sin theta. Limit will come like 0 to that theta naught, for example I am writing. So it will be sin theta naught. Got my point? Sin theta naught. So now question arises, you can directly write down in that way also. If tan theta naught is according to this format, so what should be the sin theta naught? Directly you can write down this. For sin theta naught, can we write down it is L by 2 divided by under root of x square plus L square by 4, because this is the hypotenuse side. Sine of acute angle, got my point? Sine of the acute angle can be written perpendicular to hypotenuse. So against the upper limit value, you can directly substitute this value as the result. Got it now? So now I will be doing the about uniformly charged circular ring. Circular ring is also considered to be one dimensional body, provided if you do not consider the thickness of the material of the ring. Okay. So let Q charge is available on the circumference of a ring of radius r. If there is a circular ring of radius r, then on its circumference, if we consider q be the total charge, then lambda, that is the linear charge density, will be q divided by the total length of the ring, that is 2 pi r. Circumference length of the ring is undoubtedly 2 pi r being taken the radius. So for example, if I take this is that circular ring, if this is that circular ring is taken, charge is appearing on the circumference of it, we will be discussing the electric field. So definitely if you want to discuss the electric field at the center of the circular ring, so first point, electric field at its center. If you want to discuss electric field at its center, so it will be straightway 0. Why? Because in case of a circular ring, if you want to discuss about the electric field at center, then what will happen? Each and every element, each and every pair of diametrically opposite element will execute, each and every diametrically opposite element will execute equal and opposite force on the +1 charge at the center, right? If I take dq charge here, so a similar dq charge will be appearing at diametrically opposite segment also, yes or no? So therefore, for uniform charge distribution, all pair of diametrically opposite elements will be counterbalanced by exerting equal and opposite forces on a +1 charge placed at the center, because that is the mathematical logic of finding electric field at any point. So based on that argument, we can say net electric field will be 0, because every pair will be getting cancelled out. So that's why we will be now discussing we will now discuss the electric field at a point on its axis. This is the radius r, this is the center O. Let P be a point on the axis at taking the distance of that point from center of the ring as x. So electric field at P. So electric field at P, we will discuss electric field at P on the axis. Okay, so we will be discussing electric field at this point. So whenever we will discuss the electric field at this point, so again, as we know, the total charge appearing on the circumference of the ring, being it is a dimensional charge, we cannot calculate the total force on this +1 test charge at P because of the total charge Q. So what we will do? We have to consider diametrically opposite elements, okay, so that we can consider small but identical elements appearing diametrically opposite. So of course, with respect to these two elements, that line joining, that diameter and axis, that can always form one plane. Any diameter, see, if this is one diameter and this is being an axis, so can't we think about this is a plane? So with every diameter, with every possible diameter, and combining with axis, we can make infinite planes for a circular ring, right? All those planes will be perpendicular to the plane of the ring. So this is the way. This is one plane where the line joining the two diametrically opposite element and axis, that will form one plane. Do you understand the geometrical logic or not? Could you follow the plane that I am talking about? There will be a plane. See, it is a 3-dimensional geometry. The plane of the ring and position of axis will always be perpendicular. So that's why if I am assuming the this plane of the board is that plane joining the diameter and axis, then ring position, cross section of the ring can be like this, perpendicular to the plane of the board, right? Are you getting it? As assuming, I am like imagining the situation is important. Is it okay? Fine. So therefore this element charge will exert a repulsive force on +1. This element charge will also exert repulsive force on +1. Geometrically, if I take these two angles, theta is as the semi-vertical angle, because this line will be the slant line joining the circumference of the ring with a point on axis, right? So let this is BD, both these are DE each. So again, for one pair of symmetrical element, ultimately we are getting the result along the axis, something like 2D cos theta. So this symmetrical geometry is very much important. Understanding the geometry and its symmetrical result, this imagination, this visualization is very much important, right? So with respect to this diametrically opposite elements charge, they are exerting repulsive force at the +1 charge, so therefore they are appearing like this. So their resultant is 2D cos theta. So if one pair of diametrically opposite charge elements are exerting 2D cos theta on the +1 charge at P on the axis in the direction of axis line, then all such diametrically opposite pair of elements will behave in a same way on the +1 charge at P, isn't it? In the previous case, there also the result was coming 2D cos theta, but against each and every pair of symmetric